Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user Throwaway32 now. I, 33 female, have been with my boyfriend, 31 male, for a year and 3 months. I'm thinking about breaking up with him because he doesn't like that I give expensive gifts and money to my parents. First, I want to apologize because this might be a long one. I'm freaking out a little and need some advice from strangers. I want to just give some background on everyone involved here first. Both of us are doctors. I finished residency last year and he is still in residency. We met at the hospital we work at and we got into a fight because he saw me buying a plane ticket for my parents to come visit me. So, both of my parents were doctors. They both made a lot of money, especially when you combine their income. However, we have lived as a middle-class family. While their peers and friends lived in fancy properties, some of them more than one, and had nice luxury cars, we were pretty much your average suburban household. This is because they have always liked to be frugal when it comes to spending money on themselves. They would send money to Mexico for their family every month and give some to charity. And when I started middle school, they started doing Doctors Without Borders. When I was 16, they used to take me to their medical missions to see how fortunate I was. The thing that they do like to spend a lot on themselves is traveling. I've been to so many countries before I was 18 and learned so much, but even then, we were pretty frugal. While they could afford fancy hotels, they chose not to, and recently they've been using Airbnb. Now, one thing about my mom is that she likes handbags. One time, I caught her looking at Louis Vuitton bags online. One was worth $1,000 and I asked her why she doesn't buy one. She said that it doesn't make sense for her to buy something that expensive just for her. So I told myself that that was the first thing I would do when I make it. Because another thing they spent a lot of money on is on me. One time when I was in college, I told them I had a backache and they bought me a Tempur-Pedic. I never even asked for it. I also got a new car when I got into college. I got to study abroad as well because of their money. At the time, I started working part-time jobs because I didn't want to take advantage of my parents. They were already paying for my tuition and rent. All I had to pay for was utilities and food, so I was able to put a lot of money into my savings thanks to their help. When I got into medical school, I couldn't work as much, but they still provided for me. When I finally finished school and started residency, they retired and moved back home to Mexico. Their retirement and savings allow them enough money that they don't need any help from me. I got to keep the house, which is already paid for. I just have to pay for property tax and utilities. It's a 4-bedroom home, so my boyfriend and 3 other people live with me. We all divide the cost of the property tax and utilities, so it comes out to about $400 a month. And when you're working as a resident, you still aren't making that much money. It's only enough to get by. Given that I live in an expensive city, $400 a month is really helpful. Now, here's the problem. Thank you if you're still here, by the way. I am very grateful to my parents. While my colleagues have about $200,000 in debt, I barely have any loans. I have always wanted to give back to my parents because of this. So when I was done with residency and started making a lot, I finally bought my mom that Louis Vuitton purse and my dad that helicopter toy he likes. I also took them out to a nice fancy dinner. When I gave them their gifts, my mom started crying and told me to return hers because it was too much. I told her she needs to keep it and I'll be offended if she didn't. We then had a nice heart-to-heart where I told them that I am who I am because of them, and they told me how much they are proud of me. Then I told my boyfriend about this and he just said, "Ugh, she's so emotional." Which is true, she cries easily. But the thing is that sometimes I'll randomly send my parents cash if I have extra after spending my money on important expenses, shopping and my savings. I'll tell them to use it on themselves for fun. Now, I know that I won't always do this because when I have a family of my own, I'll be prioritizing them. I know this because it's what my parents tell me, but I want to do this while I still can. It makes me happy. So, my boyfriend and I got into a huge fight today because he saw me buying a plane ticket for my parents to come here. He told me that I'd already bought myself a ticket to see them. Why do I still have to buy a ticket for them to come here? That should be their expense. It's true, they can afford it. However, they can only afford to see me maybe once a year since they're only relying on retirement money. I would like to see them at least more than that. Anyways, he says they've created a spoiled rotten child, saying that my parents enabled me by giving me so much. This confuses me because when I do something for my parents, he tells me how codependent they are and it's their job as parents to help me. I then called him a hypocrite and told him he was basically living off of my parents by living in the house they paid for, and if he doesn't like it, he should just move and live in a $2,000 apartment like everyone else. So he's in a hotel now, but he said he will come home tomorrow morning. I honestly don't know what to do after that fight. There was a lot of yelling and he destroyed this sentimental vase my grandmother made for me. Do I suggest couples therapy? I'm really in tears as I write this because he's the first serious boyfriend I've had in a very long time. Well, OP, if I was in your shoes and I just had that fight, the first thing I would do instead of thinking of couples therapy is to change the locks. Your boyfriend does not sound like a nice person, at least not one that would promote you to keep good contact with your family that is living in another country, a family that really loves you. But that's not the worst part. To me, the worst part is that he believes he has the right to tell you how to spend your money. And here's the thing, you guys are just dating, it's not even serious. There's nothing here for him to be looking over your shoulder on how you spend your money. That's just wrong, it's none of his business. And then when you called him out as a hypocrite, which is absolutely true, he lost his temper and he got violent. I don't know what he did with the vase, if he threw it on the floor, if he threw it at a wall, I don't know. But the thing is, he lost control, and that's never a good thing. When you're having an argument with your partner, it's understandable to get upset or to get frustrated, but then you work towards the compromise. You don't get angry enough that you would break something. So yeah, OP, I think you should change the locks to your house, and tomorrow morning when he shows up, he should just get a box with his things, and that's it. And what do you guys think about what's going on here? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Think of Your Abuela says, I created my first Reddit account to tell you, don't you dare to let that man back in your house your parents worked for. He destroyed a vase your abuela made you. What the F are you thinking? Do you think they worked so hard and loved you so well for you to crap all over your own self-respect by being with a man who wouldn't do such a thing? This guy is a capital L loser who wouldn't know love if it bit him in the face. Hope is a good breakfast, but it's a bad supper. This man has shown you who he is. Don't you dare spit in your family's face by making this a-hole a part of it. And OP responds, oh, thanks for taking the time to make an account for me. I love your username. I stopped crying for a bit, but this comment made me tear up again because you're right. Olivia Prestine says, he sounds pretty resentful. Calling you spoiled rotten and complaining about how you spend your own money doesn't bode well for your relationship. And then he destroyed your property over this? Yeah, no, that's not okay. Do you want to be with someone who yells at you and doesn't respect your things? And OP responds, no, I shouldn't be with someone like him. It's funny, when this argument was going on, I was thinking, break up immediately. This is gonna sound pathetic, but one of the reasons why I'm second guessing is because I honestly don't know how I'm gonna find someone else with my kind of schedule. I figured dating another doctor would make it easier, but I never expected someone so stubborn like him. If I'm being honest, if that's the only reason why I chose to stay, then it's not really worth it, right? Bun Bun says, you're doing something nice for your parents, yet you're being called a spoiled rotten child? Huh? He sounds like an abusive jerk, telling you how to spend your money, dismissing a heartfelt interaction with your parents by saying your mom is so emotional, calling you names, breaking your things. You are obviously a person with a good heart. You deserve better than this. Additional information from OP's comments. For those of you wondering, I started dating my boyfriend because of his strong personality. While I had everything easy, he didn't. He only had himself to depend on to become a doctor. It's something that I admired and still do about him. I probably should have mentioned this quality earlier. It's probably obvious that I'm a timid person, so initially I thought our contrasting personalities was a good thing. And of course, my parents aren't perfect. I didn't mention the things I didn't like about them because I thought they were irrelevant to the post, but they can be pretty competitive, for example. They also did work a lot when I was a teen. I didn't think they overcompensated by throwing money at me. We did go on a lot of vacations together and we hung out on their days off. Honestly, it was the best growing up. I didn't feel they were smothering me, but I also didn't feel neglected. And about the mattress, I had the same old spring mattress for 14 years before they got me the Tempur-Pedic. You're actually supposed to change your mattress every 7 to 8 years. It becomes bad for your spine the older your mattress gets. So they bought the Tempur-Pedic for me because it was for my health. My ideal situation would be if I get to see them on holidays and my and their birthdays. That's at least 4 times a year. I know many people who visit their parents once a month and they don't have codependency issues. The way my vacation time works is by seniority, so the people who have been working here longer get to choose their vacation time first. I'm just starting out, so I have been getting September. No holidays or birthdays fall on that month. Besides, I only get 2 weeks of a year, so it's actually more convenient for me to send them a ticket to visit me that way. As for the purse, I really don't have a reasonable excuse other than I wanted to buy it and I could finally afford it. Opie's edit. My roommate or best friend just came home and I've told her what happened. She actually told me some red flags about my boyfriend that I never noticed before. We're going out to talk some more, so I will update and reply to everyone else. Thanks for all the helpful advice. I've read them all and took them all to heart. Alright, well, the community agrees that OP needs to drop him and just move on, and apparently that's what OP is gonna do thanks to her roommate's help. So let's move on with the update to see how this story ends, but of course before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now, let's move on to that update. Thanks for all the positive comments on my original post, they helped a lot. So, update time. By the way, any conversation I reference in this update is somewhat paraphrased. Anyway, so the day after I posted, my best friend came home as I was reading your replies. I told her what happened and she told me that it's honestly not that surprising. We then decided to talk at a small bar and she told me there were many things that she didn't like about my boyfriend. Let's call him Manny. She was actually surprised I was dating him in the first place. First of all, there's no denying that he's an ambitious person. While I had everything easy, he didn't. He depended on no one to get to where he is today. However, she told me that he's also a very intense person. At the hospital, he's very hard to work with. When interns make a small mistake, he'll ask them what school they graduated from. If it's a prestigious school, he will flat out tell them, "What? They take anybody now?" If it's a low-tier school, he'll say, "Well, no wonder why." He made one volunteer who's an undergrad cry at one point. At home, he's just as difficult to live with, she says. For example, if my roommates cook something, they'll usually eat and then wash the dishes after they're done eating. However, if he sees them eating and they haven't cleaned the kitchen yet, he'll say something like, "Well, there are some lazy people here," or "Do I have to wash everything?" She said that even leaving a fork becomes an issue now. Now, I'm not proud of this part, but I kinda got mad at her for a minute. I was drunk at that point and needed someone to blame and asked her why she let me waste my time with someone without telling me all of these red flags. She told me that these issues were just minor problems and she didn't feel the need to get in our way over something trivial, especially since I was happy with him. However, she said that this fight we got into now is not trivial and advised me that it isn't something I should let go of. So she suggested we grab some more wine and pack up his things. It was so fun, just being so drunk and attempting to fit everything in a small suitcase. Honestly, we spent more time laughing than packing. The next day, he came home. At that point, I was 85% sure of breaking up with him, but I still wanted to hear what he had to say. Sometimes people make mistakes and you can really see if a person is worth it by how they fix them. Before he went home, he just kept texting me about how he was sorry about the way I took his criticism, and he said that it's actually good that someone criticizes me instead of kissing my ass like everyone else. So, not really an apology. Then, when he saw the suitcase though, he started to apologize and say he was wrong. Have you guys ever heard a child apologize? You know that tone they make when they're just trying to say what they know their parents want to hear so it can be done with already? Well, that's how he sounded. Then there was some silence and I just said, "Well, what about the vase?" And he says, "What about the vase?" I just looked at him and didn't give him an explanation because he should know what about the vase. So I wait for him to give an explanation. He says, "Okay, I'm sorry, that was mean. Maybe we can probably take the pieces, dull them out and make it into a charm bracelet." I told him if I wanted a bracelet, I would have asked for one. I wouldn't say this out loud, but I kind of liked the bracelet idea. But I like the idea of a mosaic more, like a Redditor suggested. There was another awkward silence, so I spoke. Do you know how annoying it is for me to do something nice for my parents and then there's a negative Nancy on my shoulder shaking his head or making rude comments? You take away the moment when you do that. So he said, yeah, I can see how that's annoying. I'm just worried that if we get married, you'd always have your family. Your parents themselves always sent money to their parents, and I didn't want that to be something I have to look forward to. It can become a burden. I told him I didn't believe that was the reason, and even if it was just horrible to think that helping family members is a burden. I said, I know full well that my parents don't need our help. If anyone was gonna be a burden, it's you and your loans. I know that sounds horrible, but I was getting really angry at that point. So he told me that that's exactly what the problem was. He has loans and I don't. That I'm just so lucky in my life. I told him I know I'm lucky and I'm glad he recognizes I'm lucky. So what's the problem? But he went on, do you think you would have been a doctor without your parents' help? And maybe you got into a school through their connections. I told him that if I was going to use my connections, then I would have tried to get into his school or my parents' school. He and my parents went to prestigious medical schools while I attended an average one. He replied by saying that that's the difference between the two of us. While he's so ambitious and won't settle for less, I'll be happy with an average school. Ugh, it was like talking to a brick wall. Either I'm using my parents for connections or I'm not ambitious enough. At that point, I was just so exhausted. I was hungover and his voice sounded like nails on a chalkboard. So I just told him to leave and I'll have our mutual friend bring the rest of his stuff. He asked me if we were breaking up over this and told me that he can't help that he feels that way. He'll try not to voice his issues about my parents next time. I said to him that I can't be around him knowing that he was thinking of something negative while I'm around my family. Even if he's not saying anything, I'll see it in his face. I honestly don't get what his deal is or where his insecurity is coming from. Okay, if you look at us just on paper, he's definitely the more interesting one. He went through a lot of hardships as a teen, graduated at the top of his class and participated in many different projects and charities. No one is denying this. I don't understand why he has to keep proving himself. I, on the other hand, I'm your typical med student applicant. Sure, I got good grades and did the required things to get in, but not enough to set me apart from other applicants as he did. I would have been happy to go to the University of American Samoa online if I can still match residency. So yeah, we broke up. He texted me a few times, I haven't responded, so he texted me with, you know it's illegal to kick someone out without notice. I don't know what to do about that part of my situation, so I'll have to figure that part out. Thanks. Yikes, OP. Well, good riddance for that guy. I do have to say, he sounds like a real go-getter, but then he turned it into self-importance, and that's when he got toxic. I get the impression that he has a little bit of narcissism there because he thinks he's the benchmark for which he needs to measure everybody else, and if they're better than him, well, they're not really that better than him, and if they're worse than him, then he needs to point that out. So all in all, OP, I'm gonna call this a happy update because you got rid of the toxicity. So here's wishing you all the best in the future and enjoy the holidays with your parents. Take care, OP, and thank you for sharing. Now, there's still some time left in the video, so let's squeeze in a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user HatesFacebook 2022. Sometimes you just do what the customer wants. One of my employees accidentally sent out the wrong item on an internet sale. The person was more than just pissed. We offered a return at our expense and will ship the correct item as soon as possible and the original shipping would be refunded. But no, that wasn't good enough for this person. Told me I should fire Steve for this. Steve, not his real name, had made a simple mistake and things happened because we were in the busiest time of the year. Now, this was 2 weeks before Christmas and I finally replied to this angry customer. Dear customer, thank you. I appreciate your insistence that action be taken in this case. I had been building a case to remove Steve from the company for some time and this helps me seal the deal. You aren't the only person to tell me this. Thanks to your complaint, I have given Steve his walking papers. He was very upset. He even cried a little bit and asked after 4 years how I could be so heartless to fire him 2 weeks before Christmas and that he was the only source of income for his family with 2 kids and a disabled wife. I told him he pissed off the wrong customer. Sorry, Steve, but Santa won't be visiting your kids this year. Oh, and Steve, sorry, but you no longer qualify for your year-end bonus. I thanked the customer because his complaint was going to save the company a lot of money, and as a reward I was making his $8 purchase totally free. The customer sent back a very long email where he profusely apologized over and over to the point they must have been crying at the computer while typing it out. They were shocked and stunned I would fire someone just before Christmas and had this attitude that it was a good thing. They literally begged me to hire him back. Well, Steve and I had a good laugh reading what this angry customer wrote. I saved the letter and over the next 2 years sent it out twice more. Steve was not only a good employee who was honest and caring, I also considered him a friend. Give the people what they want and suddenly they realize they are the monster they hate the most. Absolutely right, OP. Be careful what you wish for because it just might come true. This was fantastic, OP. Thank you for sharing. Take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.